So this is
Hi
good.
everyone, welcome to tonight's TD show. Hope you're all doing well. Tonight's guest is we have Enrique Huerta with us, National Tournament Director Enrique Huerta, and just off to the side of him, we can't. There we go. We have another National Tournament Director, Karen Pennock. So hi Karen, how you doing?
Hello.
So Enrique is our official guest for the show, and Karen's like hiding out the way just to give Enrique all the hints and tips and put him on the right track if he says anything wrong tonight. I think
Someone has to
so.
pass me the answers.
So let's do our usual thing and go and meet our guest for this evening, our one official guest at least. And you can always type exclamation point guest in the chat channel to meet Enrique. So Enrique is a national tournament director and FIDE national arbiter. A little comment there that I put in the chat says who's procrastinating on applying for his FIDE arbiter title. So just a little dig there at Enrique. Enrique is being chief tournament director of many, many, many national events, National Open, National Scholastics, etc. So he's probably a very well-known figure in the tournament director world. Enrique, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I've
Let's
I've enjoyed all the episodes so far, so I hate to break the streak you've had.
Don't worry. I think tonight we're gonna learn an awful lot based on our prior conversations. Enrique, how did you get into being a tournament director? What got you down this long path here?
Well, probably like most of your guests, I started playing chess at a young age, and then it turned into being a chess coach because I still wanted to be involved in the game. And then, in order to keep the game going, it turned into being a tournament director. And thanks to a couple of tournament directors who I owe the world to, Audrey Coletti and Al Losoff, I started doing national events, and it just kept on growing from there.
All right, and it definitely has grown. So I know you get around a lot of these events, and it's always a fun and enjoyable time seeing you at the National Open every year. So I know we like to work that one together,
Yep.
especially on even numbered years. But
Yep.
we'll keep
Especially
we'll
most of
keep
the
that
time.
we'll keep that to our little secret. Anyway, so let's get into the meat of tonight's show, which is going to be tie breaks, and we're talking non-monetary tie breaks, and in particular individual Swiss tie breaks predominantly. So yeah, there was a lot once we got into discovering what tie breaks were available and in the rules and started. We really wanted to cover a lot more tie breaks, but we determined that there's just going to be too much to do
We only
here.
have
So
2 hours, so we really can't.
so let's get into the introduction to tie breaks that's in the rule book here, and so the first thing it says is there's no perfect tie break system, and there really isn't. I prefer if it's a tie break and you need to break the tie, let them play chess somehow. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you have to have a tie break. So it says, ease and speed of calculation is a concern. Playoffs provide a better alternative to traditional tiebreak systems. And it shows you how tiebreaks are done. So anyway, so tiebreaks, we're talking non-monetary tiebreaks, and I think what tiebreak systems are allowed to be used is key here. And so you can use any tiebreak you basically want. There are a lot of tiebreaks listed in the rulebook. However, if you don't list any tiebreaks or post them and or announce them prior to round one, so that's either in your TLA advertising or however you do it, or an announcement prior to round one, there are certain tiebreaks that you have to use. This says the announcement when used, tiebreak system should be posted at the site before the first round. Several tiebreak systems that you can use. Thus, at least the first two tiebreak systems should always be posted. Directors should be prepared to explain how the tiebreak systems work. So after you've finished with this little presentation, Enrique will have fully explained to you how most of these tiebreak systems work, at least the ones that are most commonly used. Is that a fair assessment, Enrique? You would have.
I would say yes, hopefully. Short of pairings and how money gets distributed, uh, tie breaks is probably one of the most popular questions I ever get asked is why did this person get the trophy and this one did not?
Yep, I agree. So, and for anyone who's interested in monetary tie breaks, you will find a video in the US YouTube. And I think I put a little command here. Did I do that? No. Oh, TD show. There we go. So if you're looking for the previous editions of the TD show, and also a couple of workshop seminars, and one of them covered monetary prizes and how to distribute prizes. If you go to that YouTube link there, youtube.com/US Chess Federation, look for the playlist on TD videos, and you should find something on monetary tiebreaks. Anyway, let's get into here. It says monetary prizes. Tiebreaks are not used for cash prizes. So this is usually to divide award trophies, things that are indivisible, so that you can't split a trophy in two. So unless you're lucky enough to be able to award two trophies, you got to use tiebreaks somehow to determine who wins and who doesn't. So that's to let you know that tiebreaks are not normally used for cash prizes. There are some people that do that. I know CCA has $100 bonus prize to clear first or winner on tiebreaks. So they use tiebreaks for that $100, but it's a special prize. It's not part of the actual first place prize. So, and then the choice of tiebreak methods. Here, different systems will yield different results, but the systems discussed here, not random. Each seeks to discover the first among equals, so the best, assuming that the best tiebreak is the person that performed best out of those players that all finished with the same score, is the idea. And which system to choose depends on the nature of the tournament, traditions, and the qualities required for the specific situations and conditions at hand. So you're allowed to choose depending on what you're doing. If you're doing a round robin tournament, you might want to choose different tiebreaks from if you're doing a Swiss. There are a lot of other methods you can choose, but we're just going to cover tonight the 4 standard tiebreaks that US Chess, as you can see here in 34E. These are the 4 standard tiebreaks that US Chess expects you to use in the absence of you making an announcement to the contrary of that. So if you don't announce or post different tiebreaks prior to the first round, and you're using tiebreaks at your event, these are the 4 that will be listed. We've got modified median, Solkoff, cumulative, and cumulative scores of opposition. So, and those are the 4 tiebreaks that we're actually going to discuss tonight.
4.5. We got an extra.
Right. So we have to explain one extra tiebreak so that you understand the other one, or the other 2, as the case may be. So let's. I think we're about ready to get into the first tiebreaks. And Enrique, we were finding that some of these things are a little out of order, or the rulebook doesn't quite necessarily.
It's very strange because the rulebook says for median, go look at modified median to learn how to do it. And it kind of throws me off because I would have thought there would have been a section just describing median and then another section saying, and this is how you modify it. But instead, it's all in one section.
Right.
So I think it's important to understand that median is sort of like our base tiebreak for 2 others, and then it gets modified for this first tiebreak. So a lot of these rules apply to the other tiebreaks as well.
Yep. So what we're going to do, so you'll see modified is in parentheses here. You won't actually find it in parentheses in the rulebook, but where it's in parentheses here, we're talking about median, and it also refers to modified median. But this is the basic rules for the median system. And then we'll get into the modifications later on that produce the actual modified median. So the median system, also known as the Hackness system, it tells you what it does there. It evaluates the strength of a player's opposition by summing the final scores, his or her opponents, and then discarding the highest and lowest of those scores. So if you play in a 6-round event, you take the scores of the 6 opponents, take top one out, throw the bottom one out, and the sum of the 4 remaining players becomes the median tiebreak score. And you see there, which says for tournaments with 9 or more rounds, the top 2 and the bottom 2 scores are discarded. So that's basically the median. And again, median does have, and modified median has this adjustment for unplayed games, which count as a half point each, regardless of whether there were buys, forfeits, or simply rounds not played after an opponent withdrew. So an opponent who won the first 2 games, lost the third, withdrew, and did not play rounds 4 or 5 would have an adjusted score of 3 points. So he'd get 1-1 for the first 2 wins, lost the third game, so there's a 0 in there, and then withdrew and didn't play rounds 4 or 5, so he gets half a points for those 2 unplayed games.
And it's important to note that for this paragraph, the scores, we're referring to the opponent's scores. The opponent's scores are adjusted for unplayed games.
Right. So, yep. And so these adjusted scores are used only to calculate the opponent's tiebreaks. The player's own score is not actually changed. So, yeah. And then let's actually move on here. So if the player involved in the tie has any unplayed games, they count as opponents with adjusted scores of 0. So this is where we're talking about the actual player's score itself. If they themselves didn't play any games, then any of those count as 0 towards their sum. And of course, the 0 is probably going to be one of the lowest scores that you'll throw out of the pile in the medium, at least.
Usually it is, but this is where you'll get coaches complaining that an unplayed game hurts their player because it gives them a 0, whereas they could be dropping someone with 2 points instead.
Right. And as Brian Yang is saying in the chat there, basically, even after you beat your opponent, you got to still root for them, because the better your opponent does, the better your tiebreaks will be. And that's pretty much how that works. Okay. So that's the median aspect of it. Now we're going to get into what the modified section of modified median is. So modified median takes those 3 sets of rules that we just looked at for median, except modified median takes, if you have an even score, so that's exactly 1/2 of the maximum possible. So if you're playing a 6-round event, it's if you score 3 points, you basically treat it exactly the same as median. So you have the highest and the lowest score opponent excluded. However, the system is then modified for players who have a plus score or players who have a minus score. And when it's a plus score, you discard the lowest opponent's score, and that's right?
Yeah, the least significant. So when you're on the top, you ignore the bottom.
Yeah, and then when you have a minus score, you discard the highest opponent's score. So this is the modification to the modified median rule set. So you've just got to remember that. And then where there's tournaments of 9 rounds or more, the top 2 and the top bottom scores are discarded for even scores, just the same as it was with median. Except now the bottom 2 scores are discarded for plus scores, and the top 2 scores are discarded for minus scores. So hence modified median does that for 9 or more rounds. So it sounds fairly simple, but a little confusing. Hopefully we'll get into some examples here that will show you pretty much how this works. So this is a little review chart that we did. We're calling it modified, in parentheses, median review, because it sort of is. The median section is the middle, where it says median and even score. That's exactly what you treat for the median. if you're just using the median tiebreak. When you're using modified median and someone's on an even score, you'll still use that same column down the middle. But if someone has a minus score, you use the column that says minus score, just exclude the highest scoring opponent or exclude the two highest scoring opponents. And when you have a plus score, you'll just exclude the lowest scoring opponent or the two lowest if you're running a tournament with 9 or more rounds. Usually, like the national scholastics are 7 rounds, and so it would be the 1 through 8 rounds. And usually we're only looking at tie breaks for those people that finish at the top when it comes to trophies and stuff. So we're always excluding the lowest scoring opponent. Usually that's I don't think anyone with an even score would probably get into contention for many trophies at the national scholastic.
When you're dealing with under prizes below a certain rating, you run into the flip. But you're right. Normally we're dropping the lowest scores.
Yep. And then also remember the 2 adjustments at the bottom. All opponents' unplayed games count as half point for calculation of the opponent's score, and all your own unplayed games count as opponent with 0 points. So are you sure this applies to a 1-round? Well, I guess it does apply to a 1-round tournament, but it's it should be pretty easy to calculate the tiebreak then, because I guess you exclude at least one player, so everyone's tiebreak should be 0. But anyway, and let's go to a modified median example. So this is an example and we've taken player 3, and this was from a real cross table. We'll get into that later, but so we're looking at player 3 and trying to work out his modified median score. And so what you need is the scores of all the opponents. So you'll see player number 74, if you look at the column on the right, scored 2.5 points. And we basically listed the opponents and the number of scores. And you'll see where he won against 43. 43's score was actually 3.5. But his adjusted modified median score is 4 points because of that half point bye in round 6. So we use the 4 points.
To clarify, it's the unplayed game in round 7.
Oh, right. That's right. I'm sorry. So yes, he actually scored 3.5 points, and with the half point bye and the unplayed game, I guess.
Both of them count as half a point. It's just that we already counted the half point for round 6.
Yep. So, and then that leaves us with a sum, if we add up the scores of all the opponents, as 27.5. And because he's on a plus score, it was a 7-round tournament, and he scored 6 out of 7. We exclude the lowest possible score, which is 2.5. The lowest opponent score, 2.5. So we take that out, and that gives us a total of 25. So his modified median tiebreak score in this round is 25. Does that make sense? Does anyone in the chat not understand this? I know it's a little difficult to type if you don't understand it, but it's hopefully fairly clear from this. All right, so this is our modified median example, and hopefully that's pretty clear what modified median does. The next tiebreak we're going to look at is Solkoff. And Solkoff basically takes the same as the modified median system, 34E1, except that no opponent's scores are discarded. So basically you take the median system, which is, and then you don't discard any scores, but you still do the adjustments. So here's the quick review for Solkoff. So we're talking any number of rounds. Doesn't matter, minus score, even score, plus score. There's just no exclusion for any of the opponents. And again, this is what I was talking about. The all opponents unplayed games count as half point for calculation of opponent score, and all unplayed games count as opponent with 0 points. So if you don't play a game yourself, you get 0 points for that particular game in terms of your own tiebreak. So this is a Solkoff example for the same player. So again, this is exactly the same as the modified median. The only difference is on the column on the right where it says exclude, we're not actually excluding any scores anymore. So we don't exclude the lowest score of the 2.5. That stays in. And so the Solkoff tiebreak for this player is 27.5. So where we had the modified median took the 2.5 off, Solkoff doesn't. You don't adjust for anything. You just all the opponents are treated the same. However, as you can see, when he played player 43 there, you still make the adjustment for the unplayed game to the opponent's score and add that adjusted score to the total. So hopefully that was fairly simple for modified median and Solkoff. Next tiebreak on the US chess list is cumulative. I think this one's fairly simple, but I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize that there are adjustments to make to cumulative scores. You think that's true?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely surprising. I think most seasoned TDs know that there's adjustments for the median, modified median, and Solkoff, but it might be a surprise to some that there's also adjustments when you calculate cumulative.
Right. So cumulative tiebreak score is very, very simple to add up to this. So it's basically a running score for each round. And we'll get into a quick example. But for each round, you take whatever their current score is, and you keep summing that from round to round to round. So if a player wins the first round, wins the second round, wins the third round, you do 1 point and then +2, so they go to 3, and then +3, so they go to 6, and so on. However, there is an adjustment to be made. So 1 point is subtracted from the total, like the sum at the end, for each unplayed win or full point buy. So it's important that you recognize that it's an unplayed win or a full point buy that they get that subtraction from. And likewise, a half point is subtracted from the sum for each unplayed draw or half point buy. So let's have a look at a brief example here. So again, we're going to use player 3 from the previous couple of examples and look at his cumulative score. So he won in the first round, lost in the second, won the third, won the fourth, won the fifth, won the sixth, and won the seventh. So basically, he starts off on 1 point. In round 2, after he loses, his score is still 1 point, but his sum becomes 2. So he goes to 1, and then 1 plus 1 is 2, and then 2 plus 2 is 4, and then for round 4, you'd plus the 3, to get to 7, then you plus the 4 to get to 11, plus the 5 to get to 16, and plus the 6 to get to 22. So his cumulative score for this play would be 22. What is an unplayed draw? It could be a half point buy, would be an unplayed draw. So like player 62 in this example in the first round had a half point buy. So because they had a half point buy, you would take their cumulative score, but then minus half a point from their total score at the end for that half point buy. So and that was a question that came in the chat. So that is cumulative. Hopefully fairly simple for most people to understand. And usually one of the most simplest tiebreaks to calculate, I think, while an event is going on, especially at the last round.
Oh, I think that's one of the reasons why cumulative has lasted for so long, is it's one of those tie breaks you can actually calculate before the last round finishes, because if they're in a tied contention, you know what their final score is, and of course you know all the previous rounds. You don't have to wait for opponents to finish their games.
Right.
As long as the player is done, or even before they're done, you can calculate what their cumulative score will be. So it's a rather handy tiebreak.
Yep. And then, of course, this leads us perfectly into cumulative scores of opposition, or opponent's cumulative, as I like to call it. So the cumulative tiebreak points of each opponent are calculated, just as we did for the player himself in the last example, and everything is added together. So this will produce a pretty big tiebreak score usually, and will normally, if the rest have been very similar or tied, you normally get quite a this is the tiebreak that will eventually do everything. So
I don't think I've ever seen this tiebreak tied in a big enough tournament.
right. So and as Ken Ballou is pointing out in the chat, there cumulative does punish the Swiss Gambit, the half point bye or scoring a half point in the first round as you play. Especially this one. But obviously cumulative, if you're given a half point up in the first round, you're basically a half point down on everyone else right through the tournament. So, but let's get into.
Just told player 62 that before this tournament.
Right. So let's talk about player 3's cumulative scores of opposition tiebreaks here. So basically, each player now that he's played against, you need to work out their tiebreak score. So you see player 11 is the first example. Player 11 won, drew, lost. So this is 1, 2, 2.5, 3.5, 4, 5. And if you add all those up as you go along, hopefully you reach 23, which is what I put in this box over here. And so you add the scores for all of those players, and then this is where you get some of the adjustments. So as you can see here, player 43 had a half point bye in round 6. So his cumulative score is 16, but after you make the adjustment of deducting half a point for that half point bye, his score comes down to 15.5. The same for player 62, who had a half point bye, and his score comes down to 13. The only other thing to watch out for, and I don't think we have an example in here, would be a forfeit win or a full point bye, where the player gets a full 1 point deduction adjustment to their score. So player 3's total cumulative scores of opposition tiebreak is 118.5. So it's like I said, a fairly big number. We're taking his 7 opponents here and working out their cumulative scores and then just summing them up. All fairly simple. Enrique, anything you'd like to add to what we've covered so far?
Nothing. I would say just don't get confused. You don't drop the low one for the cumulative. It's just add them all up.
Yep. So there aren't many adjustments to be made there. Maybe we need to come out with a modified cumulative that takes the top score off.
It could be interesting. I mean, the nice thing about computers is they handle all of this these days, but that doesn't stop a parent or a coach from asking you, why did this happen? They'll count up the cumulative and not know about the adjustment or even modified median Solkoff. Right. They won't know about the adjustment rule, and you have to explain it to them. So it's always best to be familiar with it, even though the computers do all the hard work.
Right. And as a tournament director, you should be able to explain these, especially these popular ones here, going from modified median, Solkoff, cumulative, and this one. So just be aware that if you're asked to explain them, you should be able to quickly do that, and hopefully after reviewing this show, you will be able to do that. I think we're... Yep.
Well, before we get to it, it's just personal opinion. One thing about tiebreaks is it's really a yes or no answer. It's not like maybe some of the other rulings or decisions we make where different tournament directors would do it differently. Tiebreaks, we kind of all need to do exactly right and all come to the same answer. And that's one of the few rules or parts of being a tournament director that I think is like that. Different directors can come up with different pairings or maybe rule differently in certain touch move scenarios. But when it comes to figuring out cumulative or the modified median, we all need to agree. Otherwise, it just doesn't work.
For sure. Yeah, and we should. I mean, this is all math, and as Enrique was saying, the Swiss system with TD both will calculate these for you accurately, and we did actually some research on that just to make sure. Just to make sure that they did prior to that. I'm sure they have been doing this whole time, but we just wanted to make sure as well. Anyways, we're now up to the time that you're all been waiting for. So let me go ahead and set our little trivia guy to work here. So you can go ahead and post your answers 1, 2, 3, 4 in the chat. It's time for trivia. Enrique was very active in coming up with these trivia questions here. So the first one, fairly simple, I believe. If the US chess default tiebreak method is not used for a tournament, when should it be posted and or announced? Is that 1, prior to the start of round 1, 2, prior to the end of round 1, 3, prior to the start of the last round, or 4, different tiebreaks do not need to be posted or announced? Hopefully everybody should be able to get this. This is, you don't need a calculator for this trivia question, but you might need one later on.
Pencil
Who
and
knows?
paper.
You can add things in your head. So we'll any more for any more? We got 18 viewers and only 4 answers here. Oh, that's funny how we got that little vote in there.
Hopefully in
the
time.
guy who wrote the trivia is putting answers in now. I hope he got it right.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, and as Brian says, the vote is rigged. So let me go ahead and close off the trivia and announce the final results. Enrique, everybody plumped for for answer number 1. What would you say is the correct answer?
I would agree with everybody.
Okay. Except Brian had 0. It would be his answer, so he would do it in the pre-publicity. I think Enrique and I had the same conversation, and I said pre-publicity counts as prior to the start of round 1. So I was.
and when we came up with this question, we wanted the tournament directors to realize that if it's not in the pre-publicity, they still have the ability to announce their tie breaks before the start of the tournament. Just post it, tell the players before you start, and you're good to go.
Yeah, and the only thing you shouldn't do is put a different set of tiebreaks in your TLA announcement from what you post on the site. So make sure that everything matches from one announcement to the next. All right, let's move on to a slightly tougher trivia question, hopefully. Let me open up the poll for answers here. So what is the tiebreak order used on the US Chess MSA tournament report? So when you go to the US Chess website and look at the MSA afterwards and you're looking at the tournament, what tiebreak order is that in? So is it 1, the US Chess default order, modified median, Solkoff, cumulative, and opponent accumulative? 2, same as 1, except if the submitting TD includes the tournament's tiebreak system used with the rating report. Is it answer 3, answer 1, except Sonneborn Berger, if it's a round robin? Or is it 4, MSA tournament reports are not in any tiebreak order?
Also another popular question from parents and coaches.
Yeah. So I think we have quite the consensus in the chat here by the score. Does anyone else like to make a vote before we close the vote off? It's okay to not know. That's why you're here watching this show, to learn and find out this stuff. This is not something we covered in the actual presentation, so it's okay to not know the answer to this. All right, let's go ahead and close off the poll. So we got a few answers here, and the 100% of people said 4. Enrique, what is the correct answer here?
The correct answer is 4. As you mentioned, we did not discuss it as part of the tie breaks because MSA does not use tie breaks. There have been many times I've run a tournament, even Scholastic Nationals, and you'll get an email after the fact and someone will say, my child is listed in 5th in order, but I was given the 8th place trophy. We need to fix this. And it's important to know that the tournament reports on MSA are not showing a final tiebreak, final standings order.
Yep.
As is mentioned in the chat, it's simply score and rating, and it's just there for informational purposes.
Right. Although I'm not quite sure it is by score. So I know some people are saying that in the chat. I can show you an example that's not sorted by score, but anyway, I will leave that to.
Well, then I won't even. Okay, then it's most certainly not.
It should be sorted by score, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
I had a situation the other day where I have a 0 point guy in about 8th place because I removed all of his games to rated losses, and he still remained in 8th place when it showed up on MSA rather than moving to the bottom of the cross table. So anyway, but
update if you've done.
Yeah, who knows? So anyway, yeah, and I think there is a disclaimer on MSA that says that the standings are not shown in tiebreak order, and not that anyone reads disclaimers or anything along those of it.
I almost wanted to quote that disclaimer when it was coming to the answer of this question.
Right. So anyway, let's move on to question 3, and the questions do get a little tougher and tougher as we
get
go
out
along.
your pencil and paper, folks.
Right. So let me go ahead and open the poll for this one. You might do a little calculating here. So question 3 is, what is player 2's cumulative tiebreak score? So we're looking at player 2. His cumulative tiebreak score is at 25. So you can look at his score there. He had a forfeit win in round 1. And then win, draw, win, draw, win. Is it 25? Because you do 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 3.5 plus 4.5 plus 5 plus 6. 18, as you subtract 1 point from the score for an unplayed win. So do you take that point off at first and go 0, 1, 2, 2.5, 3.5, 4, 5? Is it 24 as you subtract 1 point from the total score for each unplayed win? So it's the same as 1 except minus 1 at the end. Or is it 21.5? You subtract half a point from the score for each unplayed game. So you only give him half a point in round 1 and then calculate his score from that point. So people, it looks like there are not many votes in the chat here.
They're doing the math. They're double checking.
People are doing the mathematics here.
Yes.
And it is, tiebreaks is a lot of math work. So hopefully,
I think most times we like the cross table, the standings that look like this, but wall charts are also very helpful. The old school wall charts that show your running.
Show the actual score.
Yeah, that makes cumulative and opposition cumulative a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but we didn't want to make it too easy.
Well, we gave them the numbers and the answers. This is what it would have looked like.
And we've had one change of heart already in the channel, and that was before Enrique. That was before Enrique posted his answer, thankfully.
Well, maybe I've got more than one account.
I think there were people waiting until you posted your answer, I think, so then they would post their answer.
Well, then I'll remember that for question 4 and 5.
We have a comment saying, yeah, so cumulative is the easy one to work out, but there is a catch. So you do have to remember the issues, and it's a very small thing to remember, but if you don't do it, you can be led astray by the adjustments. So it looks like we have some people that managed to work out. We have 1 vote for 1. We had a vote for 2, but that got changed to 3. Unfortunately, the poll system does take your first answer. And then we've got various other votes for 3 since then. Does anyone else like to post? It's okay, Ken. You're okay. As we've had you on the show before, you know what it's like. All right, so let me go ahead and close the poll off here. I'm going to announce the results, even though they're not quite accurate, because we did get a 2 changed to a 3. But the majority of people went for 3, Enrique. So what is the correct answer?
I'll go with the majority of people. 324.
Yeah, so basically what you do is you add the scores as in 1, 2, 3, 3.5, 4.5, 5, and 6. But then because of this forfeit win in round 1 here, you've got to remember to make the adjustment of removing 1 point from the total score here. So this forfeit win means you get -1 at the end. So that brings us down to question 3. So or answer 3. So
And if you go back to our example, not our question, but the example, it's a half a point if it's an unplayed draw, and it's a full point if it's an unplayed win or forfeit.
right, and that's a forfeit win. A forfeit loss, you don't deduct a point.
Yeah.
It's only a forfeit win. So or an unplayed win, meaning a full point buy or a forfeit win. So yeah, so that was question 3. Great question. You know, and highlighting something that is often overlooked. Question 4. So I can't remember. Do people need?
No, I don't think so. I think we're good.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and I'm going to open up the answers here for question 4. So you can vote now by 1, 2, 3, 4 in the chat. So we're going with Solkoff here. So using Solkoff, what tiebreak score do you award player 2 for his round 1 game? So looking at his round 1 game, and it's highlighted there in yellow and red, what Solkoff score do you award him for that particular game? Is it answer 1, 0, because unplayed games count as 0? Is it 2, half a point, because unplayed games count as half a point? Is it 3, 3.5? And I had to find out why we were going with 3.5, but because all of the opponent's unplayed games, so all 7 of the opponent's unplayed games. So as you can see, player 73 there had a forfeit in round 1, and then unplayed all the way through. So you get half, so the opponent would have got 3.5. Or is it 3 points because the opponent gets a half point games for all of the other games apart from the forfeit loss? So, and we've got various, all the same, various votes in the chat. Everybody seems to be coming up with the same answer right now, which is answer number 1.
That means the trick question worked. Out of curiosity, if you can ask the crowd.
You're asking the crowd too. They can hear you. So.
Okay. Kenneth Harkins gets his first name listed in the rule book. What's Solkoff's first name? Does anybody know?
You mean Harkness?
Harkness. Yes. Sorry. Yes. Harkness.
What is Solkoff's first name?
Yes. I don't know. Are there any?
Are you asking because you know the answer, or are you just asking?
No, I do not know the answer. This is pure.
I think I did look this up, but I can't remember who it was named after. But actually, Solkoff was. They say it was invented in the 50s, I think, by someone, but it was actually used in the UK, I think, well before it was actually used over here. Or some. Reading up the history on this. So.
Oh yeah, the guy from the UK says it was invented in the UK. Okay, whatever.
Just saying.
just like football and cricket and. I see where you're going.
Ephraim, apparently. His name is Ephraim. Yeah.
Ephraim.
Thank you, Harold.
How could we forget that name?
Yeah. So anyway, let me close the votes here for this question and announce the results. So we had 9 votes and everybody voted for answer number 1. So what is the correct answer, Enrique?
I'll go with everybody. I'll say they get 0 for an unplayed game.
Right. Oh, I thought you were going to give everyone 0 for the trivia. But no, everybody gets a point, a tiebreak point tonight. So, congratulations. So the answer is obviously 0. So for any unplayed game, your Solkoff score count for you personally counts as 0. So let's go ahead and
modified median and median.
Right. So anyway, let's move to question 5, and this is the real fun one. I think Enrique wanted to save the most fun till last, so let's go ahead and do that and open up and start taking answers here. So this one might need you to do a little bit of math. So players 1, 2, and 3, and we've already seen the examples from player 2 and player 3. So now we're looking at player 1. So players 1, 2, and 3 are tied with 6 points. The tiebreaks are modified medium and Solkoff. Who does Chris Bird hand the first place trophy to? So is it number 1, player 1 based on modified median? Is it 2, player 2 based on modified median? Is it 3, player 1 based on Solkoff? Or is it 4, player 2 based on Solkoff? So I assume the first thing you have to do is work out player 1's modified median score.
Actually, what I would do is I'd work off the Solkoff and subtract the low.
There we go.
Yeah, just add them all up, subtract the lowest one, and that'll get you the first tiebreak.
Right.
So while people are calculating this one out, Chris, any thoughts on Liverpool and their championship?
It was about time. I was hoping it would. I was hoping it would never happen because my team is at the bottom of the Premiership right now. And if they'd have cut the season short and just never carried it on, my team would have been in the Premier League next year. As it is right now, they might not be. But
oh no, where are they at?
We are in 17th right now, tied with the same team in 18th, but we are ahead of them on tiebreaks, appropriately enough, on goal difference. So, but there's still a few games left to go.
Goal difference. They don't do like an SB to calculate the double round robin tiebreaks.
Right. So we got a question. Can't calculate for player 1 unknown results. I'm not sure. Did I miss a player or something? Player 8, player 9, player 25, 26, and 72? No, I think they're all there.
72, 26.
2 and 3? How can we have 2 and 3? Player 72 is not shown. Player 72 is there. Oh, maybe the bottom of your screen is cut off. If you're in full screen mode or something, I don't know. It's the bottom of the screen.
Player 72 has 2.5 points, played all of their games.
So player 72 is cut off from the screen here. Yes, so actually player 26 is cut off from the screen. Who knew? Who knew that the PowerPoint didn't fit onto the screen? That's why we ended up with such a big cross table. I'm going to do something here really quickly.
Don't advance. Don't advance.
I'm going to go to this slide. And we're going to go like this, and we're going to mush this up a touch. And then we're going to go like this. Does that help people?
And now they can't see which answer to give, though.
Well, that's okay. 3 is player 1 on Solkoff, and 4 is player 2 on Solkoff. Does that help people? I'm sorry, I missed that was cut off in there. I'll remember for next time not to go to the bottom of the the PowerPoint presentation. Anyway, do we have any votes? We have a vote for 1 and some votes for 2.
Poor player 3. They're out of it, unfortunately.
I think seeing the modified medium and Solkoff scores for the other players is... Well...
Oh,
I would say it's irrelevant, but...
Somebody's sort of cheating the system, I see.
That's for you to work out and not for us to tell you. Otherwise, that would be giving away the whole idea of this question.
Right. You can't. We gotta be able.
So I'm getting asked some questions in the chat. We like to keep the TD show to just to tonight's topic. So we will continue with tonight's topic. I'm not going to answer just general chess questions, unfortunately. But I missed it. Should have shown an AMRAM tournament. Yeah. Well, this example, we'll get into this example. I'm sure Enrique will enjoy telling the stream all about this example at some stage.
Maybe someday. I don't know. I don't think we have enough time to really go into it, but it was a fun one. And
there's a question so being asked in the chat about illegal moves, and what I'm going to do is point you to the TD Show YouTube channel here, and you will find an episode on illegal moves. So you can go ahead and find the answer to that question yourself. So anyway, let's go ahead and close off this poll. So the majority of the answers that we had was answer number 2, Enrique. So what is the actual answer to this one?
The actual
Should
and
I
real,
should I should I slide it? Should I advance it to
uh, if you wish, we can go over it. But the answer is player two on modified median.
exactly player two on modified median? So congratulations to those who got their calculators out and worked that out. And let's mush on over to so we do actually have the answers based on here. So this shows player 1, 2, and 3 in terms of their modified median calculations. And the interesting thing about this, would you like to explain it, Enrique? I'll let you explain it.
I think this kind of goes back to Brian Yang's comment is aside from the game you play against your opponent, you want them to do very well for the rest of the tournament because those points get added to your tiebreak. What happened here was player one played against player two and they finished with the same score. However, player two did not play all of their games. That first round forfeit win, that gets subtracted by that. There's an adjustment of a half a point. So player one gives player two a full 6 points, but player two only gives 5.5 to player one. So in this case, they were tied and player two got the advantage by not playing somebody in the first round. Usually you hear people complain about how unplayed games are a disadvantage to their player. In this case, it was actually an advantage. The disadvantage would have occurred in the second tiebreak, the Solkoff, because they would not have gained any extra points, whereas everyone else would have gained 2.5.
Yeah. So they would have lost on Solkoff, but on modified median, player two actually is better because of this adjustment here where they played each other in round 6. And did you want to mention where this example came from? Or
Well, this was a tournament Chris and I did work together. I believe Chris had to field many questions and maybe complaints about giving player two the forfeit win. Unfortunately, somebody didn't show up and we couldn't find an opponent to play against player two. They got the forfeit win, but because of concern about tie breaks, Chris had a tournament long weekend of complaints. And in the very end, it was actually the reason why the player won. So let this be a lesson. Never complain to the TD. They're always right.
it just happened to work out well. But yes, so this was a case where back in a long time ago, we actually did repairings in the National Scholastics for the first round, and I repaired. There was 5 players I had to repair, and player 2 was the one player I did not repair, so he got a forfeit win for round 1. I did feel quite a few complaints about that. I had definite justifications for the pairings I made, which I felt were correct at the time, and I still feel are correct. But anyway, and it just all worked out that player 2 and player 1 played each other in round 6, and that was the whole reason that player 2 ended up winning. So that is it. So we have covered the main individual Swiss tiebreaks in tonight's show.
There are many others. So
there are many others. Actually, let me see if I can quickly show you the many others over here. So you'll see here I'm bringing up the US Chess website that has the rules documents. So you'll see there are many. So in the rules here, we just covered these top 4 basically. And then we've got results between the tied players, most blacks, cash down, SB. This was cumulative scores of opposition down here. Various other things, speed playoff game, and should you need it, a coin flip. There are many more, so read the US Chess rulebooks if you want to come up with various other tiebreaks, etc. You can do that. So thank you, Enrique, for the pleasure of giving us your great advice when it comes to working out tiebreaks, and for coming up with some really good trivia to help highlight some sticking points that there might be with people calculating these at their events. So Anything else to say before?
Um, no, I look forward to where we get to do the round robin tie breaks and maybe learn the first names of Cashdan, Sorenberg, and Berger.
Right,
Sorenborn and Berger.
right.
So start researching those first names, folks.
Right, that'll be a future trivia question, I'm sure. So, thank you very much, folks. I hope you learned something from tonight's episode. You'll be able to, if you didn't catch everything, hopefully you'll be able to catch it on YouTube over the next couple of days, and it will be permanently archived on there. But for now, that's it. So, thank you very much. Have a good evening, folks, and we'll see you at 9 o'clock Eastern next week for another issue of the TD Show. Have
Good night, everybody.